Maya's life-changing decision. In a sweltering office in Phoenix, Arizona, the desert heat made the air shimmer above the asphalt. The temperature on that unforgiving Tuesday was a brutal 105 degrees Fahrenheit, one of those dry days where the sun felt like a physical weight on your shoulders. Inside Henderson's Auto Repair, a small metal shed soaked in the scent of burnt rubber, old grease, and sweat, a young girl was about to make a decision that would change her life forever. Maya Jackson was just 15 years old, yet her skills as a mechanic were already unparalleled. With long braids tied up in a tight bun and wearing navy blue coveralls 2 sizes too big for her, she worked under the scorching heat without hesitation. She had already mastered the intricacies of a V8 engine better than most grown men in the area. This wasn't by chance, this was a legacy. Her father, Marcus Jackson, had been a local legend on the south side of Phoenix. Known for his ability to diagnose any car problem just by the sound of an engine, Marcus was the type of mechanic who could fix anything with a smile. He didn't charge much, and sometimes he accepted things like apple pies or promises of future payments instead of cash. It was his way of showing kindness and compassion in a world that often didn't have room for either. But Marcus passed away 3 years earlier, taken suddenly by a heart attack while working on a car. His death left Maya and her mother, Sarah, in a precarious situation. Sarah, already weakened by chronic kidney disease, was tied to an expensive dialysis routine that drained their finances. Maya, however, inherited her father's talent and his unwavering integrity. While she was still young, she had learned from her father that mechanics wasn't just about fixing cars. It was about trust. It was about ensuring that a single mother could get to work safely and that a father could drive his kids to school without worry. Maya also learned from her father that dignity had no price tag. It wasn't something you could charge for. That afternoon, as Maya worked on a car in the back of the shop, wiping sweat from her forehead with a gloved hand, she heard the unmistakable sound of a failing engine. It was a 1969 Cadillac DeVille, a classic car that had seen better days. It came into the shop with a horrific noise coming from the engine, thick black smoke pouring from the exhaust, and a sense of imminent disaster. The car looked like it could explode at any moment. As Maya approached the car, a frail elderly woman got out of the driver's seat. She looked around cautiously, her white hair impeccably combed, but she was wearing a wool coat that seemed far too heavy for the scorching Arizona heat. She held an old handbag tightly in her hand, almost as if it were her last possession in the world. "Good morning, dear," the woman said softly, her voice trembling. "Could you take a look at my car? It's making a strange noise and I'm afraid it might break down on the interstate." Maya wiped her hands on a red rag hanging from her back pocket and gave the woman a warm smile. "Of course, ma'am. I'll take a look right now. You can wait over there in the shade by the water cooler. It's dangerously hot today." As the woman took a seat in the shade, Maya popped open the hood of the Cadillac and immediately began assessing the engine. She knew this car was in bad shape. But what she didn't realize yet was that this elderly woman was not who she seemed, and that the decision Maya was about to make would lead her down a path she could never have imagined. Setting the scene, a scorching day in Phoenix. It was a dry, unforgiving Tuesday in Phoenix. The thermometer on the outside wall of the shop read a blistering 105 degrees Fahrenheit. The sun hung high in the sky, making everything feel heavy, as if the heat was pressing down on every person and every inch of space. It was the kind of day where even the air seemed thick with the desert's fiery breath. And inside Henderson's Auto Repair, a small metal shed with greasy windows, the heat was almost unbearable. Maya Jackson wiped the sweat from her brow with the back of a gloved hand as she tightened the last bolt on an intake manifold. Her navy blue coveralls were stained with oil, and they hung loosely on her slender frame, too big by 2 sizes. Despite the uncomfortable heat, Maya focused intently on her task. At just 15 years old, she was already a mechanic who could diagnose and fix problems most grown men couldn't even identify. Her skills were no accident. Maya had learned everything from her father, Marcus Jackson, a legend in the south side of Phoenix. Marcus had been the kind of mechanic who could tell what was wrong with a car just by the sound of it. He fixed engines, transmissions, and every other car problem with such precision and a smile that his reputation spread far and wide. People didn't just come to Marcus because he was good, they came because they trusted him. Marcus had the ability to make his clients feel seen, heard, and respected, and he often worked for little to no payment, accepting things like apple pies or promises of future payment from people who couldn't afford to pay. But 3 years ago, Marcus passed away suddenly from a heart attack while working on a car. His death left a hole in the community and in Maya's life. It also left Maya and her mother, Sarah, in a tough spot. Sarah, who had been struggling with chronic kidney disease, required expensive treatments that drained their savings. The loss of Marcus meant that Maya, now the woman of the house, had to step up. Maya's inheritance wasn't just in the form of tools or skills, it was the lessons her father had passed down to her. Mechanics to Marcus wasn't just about fixing cars. It was about helping people. He had taught Maya that it wasn't about the money. It was about the dignity of the work. Whether it was making sure a mother could get to work safely or a father could drive his kids to school, Marcus believed that mechanics was a service of trust. Dignity, he always said, has no price. So, on that suffocating afternoon, Maya was deep in her work, washing her hands with a cheap citrus degreaser, when she heard the unmistakable sound of a car engine sputtering. It was a 1969 Cadillac DeVille, a classic that had seen better days. The engine sounded as if it had asthma, choking and sputtering, while thick black smoke billowed out from the exhaust. The car looked like it might explode. And then, from the driver's side, an elderly woman stepped out. She was around 75, with neatly combed white hair, dressed in a worn wool coat that seemed entirely out of place for the sweltering heat. She held an old handbag in her hand and looked around cautiously. Her steps were slow, and her body seemed fragile, as though the weight of the world was pressing down on her. "Good morning, dear," the woman said softly, her voice trembling with age. "Could you take a look at my car? It's making a strange noise and I'm afraid I'll get stranded on the interstate." Maya smiled and nodded, her face lighting up with kindness. "Of course, ma'am. I'll take a look right now. You can wait over there by the water cooler in the shade. It's dangerously hot today." Maya's instincts kicked in. She popped open the hood of the Cadillac and began scanning the engine bay. What she didn't realize yet was that this encounter would be the start of something much bigger, something that would change her life and the lives of everyone around her. Maya's legacy from her father. Maya Jackson's expertise wasn't just built on her natural ability or inherited talent. It was rooted in the values instilled in her by her father, Marcus Jackson, whose legacy lived on in every turn of a wrench, every polished engine, and every satisfied customer. Marcus had been more than just a mechanic, he was a pillar in their community. People knew him not just for his mechanical genius but for his ability to connect with others, to see them not as customers but as people. Marcus had a unique ability to diagnose a car's issues just by hearing the sound of the engine, and he could fix almost anything. From engines to transmissions, if a car had a problem, Marcus would solve it, often with a smile on his face. His skills were legendary, but his kindness was even more notable. He often didn't charge for his work, accepting things like a pie from a grateful mother or a promise of future payment from someone who was down on their luck. To him, it wasn't about the money, it was about trust and community. Maya had grown up with her father's wisdom embedded in her heart. From the time she was just 8 years old, she'd spend her weekends under the hood of cars, learning not only how to change an alternator or fix a cylinder head, but also how to do the work with care, precision, and honesty. Her father had taught her that mechanics wasn't just about fixing cars, it was about ensuring that the people who relied on those cars could live their lives safely and without worry. A mother could get to work. A father could drive his kids to school. Mechanics, he told her, was about dignity. But life had a way of taking away those you loved too soon. 3 years ago, Marcus passed away suddenly from a heart attack while working on a car. His death hit Maya and her mother, Sarah, hard. Sarah, already weakened by chronic kidney disease, was left to struggle with expensive medical treatments, and Maya was left with the heavy burden of caring for both her mother and herself. The family's financial situation grew tight, but Maya's inheritance wasn't just in the form of tools, it was the lessons her father had left behind. Her father had instilled in her a sense of unwavering integrity, a commitment to helping others, and the belief that dignity had no price tag. Even though she was just a 15-year-old girl, Maya had a wisdom beyond her years, shaped by the love and teachings of a father who had always put others first. These lessons would guide her, not only in her work but in the decision she was about to make for Eleanor, the elderly woman with the failing Cadillac. Maya wiped her hands on the rag hanging from her back pocket and looked at the elderly woman, Eleanor, who was waiting patiently in the shade. The car was in bad shape and it would need extensive repairs. But Maya didn't hesitate. Her father's teachings echoed in her mind. There were people who needed help more than a receipt. And sometimes kindness was the best payment. It was this decision, this moment of compassion, that would set in motion a chain of events that Maya could never have predicted.